Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our pre-meeting. We're now in the hands of Ms. Lisa Lambert.
This is this is the pre-meeting of the Mobile City Council, Tuesday, March 5th. We have approval of minutes from February 27th.
Any issues? Okay.
Up here, we have waiver of the noise ordinance on June the 8th from 2 p.m. until 6 p.m. at Dodge Community Center, March the 10th from 10 a.m. until 12:30 p.m. on Joachim Street, May 25th, 6 a.m. until 10 a.m. in Lions Park.
Any issues, Carol and Penn? Okay. All right.
Ordinance is held over. 46059, ordinance amending Chapter 46, Police Department and Law Enforcement of the Mobile City Code.
Mr. Penn?
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, of course, we want to always make sure we're being transparent. We said that we was going to come back. We want to make sure that we're doing everything properly, following ZIB state law. I'm gonna ask that we hold this over for a week so we can kind of. I've spoken with the city attorney, and then I want to make sure that I think that we can kind of work together to move forward with some things. Talk to our attorney as well, and see if we can get something drafted to move forward.
President.
Mr. Woods?
So where are we on the, we got an email saying that we're still in the draft phase of getting the opinion from the Attorney General. I mean, I guess that's where we're at. So, I mean, this boomerang ordinance that we keep throwing off and it comes back every 30 days. I mean, I think too, we're also, in an effort of transparency, we're looking at a resolution that was presented too. I mean, I think your resolution does what the ordinance says. And we know that we can pass a resolution without question. I mean, would you be open to tabling the ordinance and just going with the resolution?
So the ordinance was also, Michael, didn't you send an ordinance out? Or you just sent the resolution?
I sent a proposed amendment to the ordinance this morning as well as the resolution.
Okay,
They're
so,
both active.
all right, so it's been a proposed amendment to the ordinance that was sent out along with the resolution. And I have spoken to the city attorney to make sure that it follows ZOGB. Have you had an opportunity to look at that, Ricardo? So when Attorney Woods looked at it, I also talked to Chief Prime to get his feedback because, again, everything that this ordinance and resolution goal was to work together. So the amendment basically says that we're not directing, we're agreeing with the current policy. That's the amendment. We're agreeing with the current policy. That's not directing the MPD. The resolution basically is just stating that if policy was to be changed, we're requesting as the legislative body, as the council, to know about that. I'm sure that your constituent will want to know if a policy has been changed. And if you can't answer that question, that would be a problem.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm in agreement with the resolution. I just think, so the ordinance, kind of just thinking through the way it works. The ordinance obviously is a law, municipal law. And we're basically, as far as the ordinance, and Mr. Leonard might have to opine on this, we're saying that as the policy that the chief of police has implemented at this very moment, today, March 5th, 2024, the ordinance is saying that is the law, I guess. Is that what you're saying?
So the ordinance was the amendment, and of course we have to finish. We haven't looked at worded, but basically what I've talked to our council, as well as the city attorney, as well as Chief Prime, who is the chief of the Mobile Police Department, that we're agreeing with the procedure that they have in place
today,
March
5th. What if the policy or what if the
we can't direct
changes?
We can't direct them. So in the amendment shows clearly that we can direct the administration.
Yeah.
So
but on that case though, I guess what I'm saying is what if in 2028 the policy or procedure on the chief of police, whomever that is at that time changes, the ordinance that we're looking to pass would say that, I guess theoretically they couldn't because we deem that the law.
So-
But meanwhile, your resolution just saying at this very moment, today, March 5th, 2024, we recognize and we approve or we support the policy that the chief has put in place.
So the ordinance is putting basic in place, is showing unity. It's coming together, saying the same thing the police procedure is saying. We're agreeing with that
Right.
as a city.
Which the
legislative.
resolution does that as well.
No, the resolution it's a suggestion.
Okay.
So if my thing is this, if the city attorney reads it and says that it doesn't break ZABI or state law, our city attorney says it doesn't break ZABI and state law. The chief of police put a statement out, and I'm sure you read that statement. The statement said his concern is that we don't break state law. So if the amendment that comes forth doesn't break state law, everybody have the right to vote it up or down. But his concern was that it doesn't break state or ZABI. So the goal for the amendment is to put in place that we don't break ZABI or the state law. When that amendment goes forth, everybody at this seat have the right to vote, and you can vote it up or you can vote it down. But if the chief of police states that he's fine with it, if it doesn't break law or ZABI, Ricardo, who is the city attorney, says that. Linder, who is our attorney, says that. Then that shouldn't be the reason. Thank you, Mr. President.
I do have a couple questions on Mr. Penn, and, you mentioned about the chief of police. You got to remember, the chief of police concerned about the council not breaking law. He need to be concerned about his officers, because if it wasn't for his officers, we won't be having this conversation right now. My question is to you, Mr. Penn, that you saying that there are procedures in place that were put in by the administration. Have you seen the procedures? And if so, if there's a time limit on those procedures, I mean, is the no knock is good for 60 days, 90 days? How long is it good for? I mean,
And so you make a valid point, Mr. President. And I think that's the question why this ordinance and this resolution is so vital. Do anybody know how long policy for any department lasts? When you put policy in place, is it a time frame on it? Is there a time limit on it? Do we know when a policy change? Nothing is in place for these situations. And I think that's the reason why we need a ordinance in place and why we need a resolution. You definitely made my argument. That's the reason why we need it, because we don't have it.
And that was my point too.
Is there a time frame on this particular one that the mayor put out?
So it's not, from my understanding, it's no time
I
frame.
understand it. Y'all we need to know for a fact.
I mean, I'm not the person who created the policy, so you can ask the administration. Administration, is it a time frame on?
There is no shelf life. It is the policy going forward until it's changed.
Well, if
So there is no sunset on the policy.
Yeah.
I mean, it is our policy.
And the reason I asked that, because one news outlet stated, there was 90 days policy that was put down from the mayor for the no knock. And that was the first time I have heard that. So that's the reason I asked, was it a time frame on there?
I think the 90 days came from the original agreement with Kenyon to review these things.
Okay.
We went ahead and implemented the policy ahead of the review, but that review is forthcoming probably within the next month.
Okay. I think Mr. Woods and Mr. Carroll.
Yeah, that's what I'm alluding to, I guess, we know, I just had this discussion with Mr. Reynolds about another issue. We know that today, March 5th, 2024, we know where we're at. None of us have the foresight or the powers. If you do, please let me know. I'd love to get lottery numbers to see what's going to occur in the years ahead. My only concern is with an ordinance, and this goes not only for the police department or the sanitation, it also goes to sanitation, it goes to all departments. I just don't want to handcuff future employees of the city, future department heads, with the fact that anytime something changes, it has to be supported or recognized by this body. I think they need to be notified. I think the future of this body needs to be notified. I mean, I also think that all policies probably should be posted online somewhere so that, you know, as the average Joe citizen, you can go and you can see what the policy for certain areas are. I just don't want to handcuff or unintentionally handcuff as an unintentional consequence of something. Anytime something changes, this legislative body has to recognize the change, I guess. That's what I'm alluding to say.
Mr. President,
I think it was Mr. Carroll, then you, Mr. Reynolds.
I think that was Mr. Penn's point was hold it over a week, let everybody have an opportunity to read the resolution and the proposed changes to the ordinance. You know, and I think you'll find that it's not that handcuff. It doesn't handcuff. Based on my reading of the resolution, it does exactly what you say. The resolution does exactly what you say you want it to say, which is that any changes to MPD policy regarding no-knock warrants and pre-dawn raids, this is a resolution now, shall be immediately disclosed to the Mobile City Council. So there's the only requirement it places on anybody is to disclose that there was a policy change. There is an annual report, I believe, 10-year report that's put out by MPD every year. You could even further say, you know, significant policy changes shall be, you know, stated in their annual report, something like that as well.
Mr. Carroll.
Does that mean procedural changes will be notified to this council before action is taken? Or will the action be taken and then a procedural change will be announced to this council?
That's a question. And again, I don't see any reason why this council cannot codify any procedure or policy set in place by this administration. That's our responsibility, is to be the legislative body of the city. So in saying that, we don't, to your argument about 10 years from now, we don't know if we're going to be here 10 years from now. Do we want somebody with a no-knock warrant knocking down somebody's door and having unintended consequence on that end? Our job is to protect citizens as well as to protect the police officers and those who work with us. So, but our first and foremost objective here is to be public servants. Everybody in this room, including the police department. So I would say that we have a right to codify it with a directive ordinance. And I shouldn't say directive ordinance, but with a direct ordinance that does that. And if we can't write an ordinance, then anything that we write in this city would be considered directing the administration to do anything or the mayor to do anything. Because anytime we write an ordinance or a resolution, it goes directly to the mayor for him to execute it and to make sure the administration does it. So we're not directing any department. We're not directing anybody. We're just making legislative law. Thank you, Mr. President.
Anyone else? Okay. Madam Clerk? Hello, so you sure 1 week gonna be good enough?
Yes. I mean, for me, I'm at this point that if a person disagrees, you can vote it down, vote it up, and we move forward.
Okay. All right, Madam Clerk?
I'm out of town next week, by the way.
Take 2 weeks.
All right, 2 weeks.
All right, Madam Clerk?
You're not going to be gone for 2 weeks, are you?
Ordinance 09018, ordinance amending Chapter 15, Article 3, Section 15-72 of the Mobile City Code and setting term limits for membership on the Mobile Public Library Board.
Mr. Carroll, anything?
Well, no, I was really hoping that this went to committee because there were, it affects the way people are thinking now on multiple boards. I think I told some of y'all that last week. Some y'all kind of surprised me at what you wanted to do. But I was hoping that if we move forward with this today, then we'd have a two-term limit on it, with the board member not being able to go past the second term and then out of term, and then come back with, if so wanted to come back to the board itself. And that's what I was looking at doing, is with the amendment there. But from what I've been reading from some of you guys, there's some other things now that we're looking at across other boards. So do we want to do this all in one fell swoop, or do we want to do this individually, one at a time? And then the other thing is what was the response back from, I can't remember her name.
Yeah.
I didn't talk to her.
We didn't talk to her.
I didn't.
No, we reached out to Matt Anderson, told me yesterday that he got bylaws from the library, and that he was getting them to her, so she's not had a chance really to weigh in.
It doesn't hurt to let it lay over a week or two. I mean, it's not like, we're at a dire need to change it right away. I mean, this was a request from the library itself. So if we need to take a bigger look at some of the other boards and make a decision based on what we're finding from Minigan and others and do it at the same time, I'm okay with it.
So, Ms. Gregory?
How long do you think it will be before she's able to?
I'll text Matt right now.
I see Miss Calhoun back there. Can you hear, Miss Calhoun, what we're talking about?
We need to hear what they have to say.
I do know that we sent that over yesterday. We did emailed it over. And then what we're asking is that the rule be restored to what it was originally. The original rule was that board members served a 4-year term, and they were eligible for reappointment for another 4-year term. And we're just trying to go back to that. That's all we're asking.
Yes, ma'am. So the 2 4-year terms, it was one, then reappointment, and then they were off a term, and then they could come back.
That's right. If they served 2 terms, they were off 1 term, they could still come back again.
Yes, ma'am. I'm very, very, very aware of that.
Okay.
We're going down that road, but there's some other requests.
And our bylaws, like I said, were sent yesterday. Mhm.
So it's up to you guys. We can move forward today with that amendment, or we can wait and look at some of the other things that you guys want to look at.
Ms. Gregory?
No,
Oh,
go ahead.
Miss Minick come out forward, and she looks at something that maybe you want to come see, so if you want to go ahead and take care of this now, so that you have some running room to look at the other, and just look at that, just look at the other boards, make go ahead and handle this, and then make it some time, not have questions.
Unless there are any other amendments to this.
I don't even know what the current status is. I see the amendment, the original version that was introduced. Then I see emails with 2 suggested amendments. I haven't seen a draft that includes it all, so I can read it all and see what it says and the implications of these amendments. So I don't think we should pass it today. 1 week, I would say at least, maybe even 2.
Ms. Gregory?
Again, we're not in.
No, I'm good. I'm just listening.
Our back's not against the wall to try to take action. I'm not trying to stand in the way, but I want to understand it.
As we talked about this morning, the library is extremely important. I don't have a problem if we were to wait a week or so. It really doesn't hurt you in any kind of way, does it?
No, it doesn't necessarily hurt us to wait a week, but we would like to see this, we would like to get it nailed down.
Yes, ma'am.
Mhm.
He's asked for 2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay.
He's asked for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Madam Clerk?
Ordinance 64020, amend the City of Mobile Unified Development Code, Chapter 64, Article 5, Section 5.
And I can speak to this. Joel's not here, but some time ago, you all may remember that we sent a text question to the Planning Commission to,
Not this one.
am I on the wrong one? Yeah, it is.
No, this one is,
Now, this is just removing that section D
Section.
that we discussed, just like one sentence out of UDC, which.
I thought this was mine. Never mind then. Okay,
Either way.
save that.
Is that one on here? Ordinance
I thought that was
introduced?
it.
No, that's not on here.
Okay.
Yours
It's
isn't. But
coming, so.
But I think there was some hoops that for a text amendment to happen to UDC, there's some hoops we got to jump through with notice and all that sort of stuff. So this needs to be held over until what date? A date certain?
Yeah, you probably need more time than that because there's got to be advertising.
But it doesn't have to go to the planning commission is my understanding. This is just 15 days or 3 weeks, right, Michael?
May want to talk about that some more. I mean, we may want to just talk about that some more. I'm not
Okay.
saying anything otherwise, but I will say to add to that, there is a reason for that caveat. There's a reason for it, and I think we probably does need some work. But the reason for it is so that a landowner or potential developer doesn't get held in perpetual limbo when they're going into a transaction. That's why it was put in there. So it could be expanded or changed, but wiping it out would then allow a single person, which we've had happen in the past, just to hold it up forever, which ultimately results in a lawsuit, which results in us expending more money and then having to explain to a judge why it was held in perpetuity. So that's the reason that it's there. It wasn't put there by accident. It was put there because of a particular lawsuit.
Mr. President.
He just made my statement for me.
I think this council has the ability to interject and, as we've seen before, when one person may not like something a certain way and wants to hold it or do something different, the sort of voice of the people as a whole has the ability to interject and has exercised that from time to time. So I think the point that this is the only way to resolve a zoning issue for somebody in perpetual limbo, I don't think that's exactly true. I think at any time, the people's representatives can interject and stop that perpetual limbo that you speak about.
I would agree 100%. And it was not a person who sits on the council now. Let me
I
say
understand.
that. It was nobody in here did that. But that is why it was put in place, to keep that from happening again.
Understood. So I think, the ebbs and flows of political representation change from time to time. And I think restricting the council or the will of the people, the people's voice to say, you must, you shall, you only have the option for these three things, I think is sort of restricting our ability to act and do what the will of the people is. So I like the striking language and relying sort of on the people's voice to, make a good, sound decision. So I would ask that we just proceed with this one while still having conversations about other possibilities. But I think we've already began the advertising process on this, correct, Mr. Linder?
That is correct.
Okay.
One thing, I believe Ricardo and I talked about this a little bit in the last week, and one thing we might consider is an amendment saying that instead of the council shall act right at the hearing, which is what it says currently, basically, we could, we do this in the rules of civil procedure and some other things there where we could potentially have it that if the council hadn't acted by X number of days after the hearing, say 30, 60, whatever you wanted, it would be deemed denied by operation of law. Therefore, there would be a decision made within a certain period of time, but the council would then still have a good period of time to modify, act, change, do whatever you wanted. But we could address that due process problem potentially that way. But this is not something we need to decide this morning necessarily.
I would ask that we just proceed with holding it over for 3 weeks.
How long? 3?
3 weeks. Lana, do you know when the earliest we could act on this? Okay, so whatever that is, I'll make that motion to hold it over to that date.
Mr. Carr?
Has there been any position or statement made by the department on this change? Do they have a position on this, Shayla and everybody else?
So yes, so the answer is yes, and it's twofold. So Mr. Linder's suggestion of a shot clock would help. And I think what Mr. Reynolds talked about is the confines of it. That's sensible. It probably shouldn't confine the council to just making those three decisions. But on the counter is they would want some built-in time to either make a decision, whatever it may be. The council's free to listen to the public, make a decision. And then secondarily is based on the departments look at it and legal counsel are coordinating, whatever change we make probably needs to go to the planning commission and be properly advertised and go through the process.
I would be biased on what decisions made right here just because of the line of work that, we're in. So that's why I'm kind of curious as to what the statement would be.
Yes, it's twofold. One, we're not opposed to a change, striking it. We just want to have some kind of shot clock. I think Mr. Linder's idea of the original shot clock is a good idea. The council decides what that looks like, and you're free to make a decision, yes, no, whatever it may be. The council shouldn't be constrained that way. And then the other part of it is, yes, it needs to start with the planning commission and go through the process under state law.
I agree with that. I just mentioned that to Mr. Reynolds. But what's the length of the original shot clock? Is it open-ended?
It used to be 40 days, but that's completely up to you.
Mr. President, it's not required. I mean, lawyers can fight about this behind closed doors or whatever they want to, but, you know, it's not required by state law that we shall get the recommendation of the planning commission. It's not required for this. And to suggest that's ridiculous. We have the ability to take action without their recommendation. In some cases, in many cases, I would say in most cases, their recommendation is important, that we need to consider these things, or we want to take into consideration the administrative items for us to make a good, sound decision. In this case, we're talking very narrowly about the council's ability to act. And this narrow 3 things that we have the ability to do, we're limiting ourselves, we're limiting the voice of the people to these 3 things. We don't need the planning commission to come back to us and tell us anything about that. We have the ability to act on our own right now.
But what don't you want me to say it? Everybody sitting here, whoa, man, that argument swept flop. I mean, just took a 180-degree turn in one ordinance, didn't it? You didn't realize that?
Are you suggesting that we do need the planning commission's approval or recommendation?
I believe you missed it, Mr. Reynolds.
So anyways, I'd like to hold it to this is not divisive. I don't understand why.
They was talking about it. We're thinking about another ordinance and resolution, Mr. Reynolds.
It's okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
make my
Yeah,
point.
thank you. We really agree. We agree with you.
And a point, but different. Different issue.
It's a department. Anyone else? Madam Clerk?
Consent resolutions held over 40089, 40096, 40098, 40099, 40100 are declaring the structure at 2108 Costa Rica Street public nuisance and ordering it demolished, fixing the cost for demolition of structures at 1003B Houston Street and 1103 Lion Street, and fixing the cost of demolition of structure at 212 Norman Street, fix the cost for securing the structure at 251B Ryland Street.
Mr. President, I have an update for Mr. Penn. We have excellent news. The owner has done some on-site repairs and they have an active permit. We'd like to table this one. We'll follow up in 5 months just to make sure he's making progress, but permanent table would be good. And then Mr. Carroll, following up, these are the holdovers from the, I do have an update for the one at 251 Rylands. The gentleman that came down to speak, Mr. Coaxum, he stated that he had a tax deed. I can't find a record of a tax deed, but I do see a tax lien, and that is why he's received notice, and he does have an interest in the property. He may be responsible for the assessment if it's assessed to this property. He also stated that he didn't own the property that we are assessing for securing. I believe he does, and it's very clear in the legal description that his tax lien does include that property and would like to move forward with fixing the costs. I do expect him to show up today. No, we secured the property.
So we've already boarded up, secured it. So we're going to have to lien the property for our value of work.
That is correct, and he's opposing the lien because he, one, says he has a tax deed. That's why he's received notice, but two, he's stating he doesn't own the property, but the records I reviewed from our real estate with the title search shows that he does own the property. And what's unique about it is there's multiple lots. And I do have a little map here that will show very clearly what I understood he stated the last time. Because there's multiple structures on the property. You'll see two structures up here, which he said he did own. This is the structure we secured. He's disputing the fact that his tax lien includes this section, which clearly it does in the legal description. We'd like to move forward with.
Good question. For him to outright own that, the state law changed 5 years ago. So he's been through 3 years of ownership for him to own that property. He's going through the right of redemption.
I have no record of him going through a quiet title process and having clear ownership. The title report I have shows the previous owner, a Mr. Petit, still has title to the property, but he has a tax lien, which means he has a tax interest, as I understand it, but he does not have right of entry.
Right. Well, I think the law states you have now, it used to be 6 years, you get 3 years of right of redemption and a second 3 years of judicial right of redemption. So if he hasn't gone through the first 3 years of right of redemption, then the original owner still owns the property. I think that's the law.
That is correct of what
We
our
need to
title
check
report shows.
I know, but we need to check that because we're forcing lien against Tim. We may need to be forcing lien against.
The title report shows the previous owner, Mr. Petit, still owns the property, but it's in tax delinquency, where Mr. Coaxum paid a tax lien.
Yes,
We don't lien the person, we lien the property.
lien the property.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do expect him to show up today, Mr. Coaxum. So
All right, thank you.
Resolutions held over 01195, authorized agreement with RMO software agreement with CWS Group for software subscription, MPD record management. 08196, approved purchase order to kitchen equipment and supply for dishware and assorted serving supplies for convention center. 21200, authorized contract with Duplantis Design Group, PC for design services for new community center on Dolphin Island Parkway. 21201, authorized change order with Bay Area Contracting for citywide facility parking lot resurfacing and spot street repair. This is an increase. 37202, consider the application of Top Cat Limousine to operate a shuttle service. Ordinance is being introduced, 83021, annex certain property into the corporate limits of the city of Mobile, 3865 Remington Court.
Is that, or is this different?
This is actually a residential. It was originally annexed by petition Sims, that it was, after we did our annexation, they petitioned to get out of Sims to come to Mobile, so it's continuous with Mobile, but it's a residential property.
Just one?
Just one.
Just one property?
Yeah, it's just one.
How big?
It's just a residential.
Just a house.
Just a lot?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's a house.
It's a house.
It's a house.
oh.
And this happened long time ago with the family there.
How's our other project coming?
I need to follow up on that. That should be coming along. I think we're trying to move that. I'll call Rosalind in between meetings and let you know.
And on this one too, just for everybody's information, both the Sim City Attorney and our city attorney worked on this and everybody agreed. There are no problems between the two cities on annexing this one property.
Madam Clerk.
Consent resolutions being introduced, 09204, transfer funds from District 4 and 6 discretionary accounts to Mobile Fire Rescue Department to assist with smoke alarm blitz. 37205, recommend approval to the ABC Board for issuance of a lounge retail liquor Class 1 license to the Sticky Rooster on Highway 90. 60215, transfer funds from District 1 discretionary funds to the Athletics Aquatics account for the ARPA State Championship games.
Is this the basketball tournament?
Yes, we had some teams from District 1 to win the championship, like we always do. And we're going to the state championship.
Mr. President, I'd like to add $1,200 to the agenda to transfer to Parks and Recreation for the same. District 2 always has some state champions too also. So if we could add that to the day's agenda. I think they leave Friday, right? They leave Friday? Okay, yeah, and we'll need to be able to get that money to Parks and Recreation to help out. So if we could get it added, I would be very appreciative.
Resolutions being introduced, 08206, approved purchase order to Engineered Cooling Services for replacement cooling compressor at the History Museum, $22,955. 08207, approved purchase order to Helena Chemical Company for herbicides for parks maintenance, $17,430. 08208, approved purchase order to the University of South Alabama for EMT certification class for mobile fire rescue, $83,892. 21209, authorized contract with Canon Solutions of America for printer rental supplies and support services for Mobile Police Department, $68,293.53. 6210, authorized settlement agreement and release of claims. 6214, a resolution stating changes to the Mobile Police Department policy regarding no-knock warrants and pre-dawn raids shall be disclosed to the city council.
Mr. President, going back to 08206, the compressor, is that something that needs to be moved up and taken today to try to get that rolling, seeing as we are experiencing warmer weather this time of year?
That's a question for the
Or can they
administration.
wait a week?
Cassie's shaking her head, yes.
And 207 as well. There's no objection.
So we're gonna take these up.
Consent.
Is that the decision to take these up?
Okay.
All right.
Call for public hearings, 41211, call for public hearing to consider an ordinance to amend Chapter 64, Article 5, Section 5 of the UDC, scheduled April 2nd.
That's,
That's yours.
y'all will see that coming up.
41212, call for public hearing to consider an ordinance to amend Article 13, Section 64-13-2 of the UDC, scheduled April 2nd. 41213, call for public hearing to consider the application of Rodney Dozier to operate a shuttle service scheduled March 19th. Announcements.
Council? Okay. Anything from administration? Okay. All right, we'll see each other at 10:30.
The, Deanna,